It's the Health in the Real World podcast. It's time to start the show with Chris Janke as your host. Here to give you everything that you need when it comes to fitness strategies. We keep it simple and easy. It's your roadmap to get healthy. You don't need equipment and you don't need a gym. Just the right strategies to get you fit and trim.
Hello and welcome to Health in the Real World. I'm Chris Janke and I'm joined today with Bill DeSimone. And we're going to go through his book a little bit. Bill, how's it going today?
Very good, Chris. Nice to see you.
Good, you too. Thank you. And I want to thank you again for sending me your book, the Joint Friendly Fitness. You and I are definitely on the same page. My company is called My Core Balance. It's all about core. It's all about flexibility. Safe flexibility, and we'll talk about that because you do talk about extreme ranges of motion and how detrimental they can be. And I want to get into this, but before we start, Bill, give us a little background on you and how you came to be writing a book and what are the things you're involved in.
Well, the short story is I'm a personal trainer in Cranbury, New Jersey. And I have a small studio that you can see behind me. It's not too much more than what you see. And the reason I opened the studio was so I could practice personal training the way I wanted to do it. So, which eventually came to be called Joint Friendly Fitness. I can train people in a big gym or in physical therapy clinics or in their house, but inevitably, the client you're working with or the client I'm working with is doing something a little more moderate than what they see around them, which inevitably led to either friction between me and the other trainers or the clients. And so in order to do it the way I'm comfortable training people, my own studio seemed like the best solution.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It's not, you're not doing like like The Biggest Loser, yelling at people, drill sergeants. It's a little more subtle and controlled.
Well, so it's interesting you should say that because I started as a personal trainer in 1983, and there were sort of like 1983. There were really kind of two trainer personalities. One was the drill sergeant of just barking at people. And then there was, for lack of a better term, sort of like a consultant. Mm-hmm. So I lasted about 2 hours trying to do the drill sergeant thing. And, 3 or 4 vomiting clients later on my very first morning, I realized, all right, this is not what I want to do. This is not quite what I thought it was. So pretty quickly, I figured out why people weren't coming to a personal trainer in 1983.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I immediately backed off and treated everybody as if they'd never been in a gym before, and took the attitude that, all right, I happen to have more experience than you with this. I'm going to help you with the workout, as opposed to like the sports coach mentality where I'm going to push you through your workout.
Got it.
So I figured that out in 2 hours. It took me another 2 years to figure out that the reason why people go to personal trainers in 1983 was the fact of the appointment. New York City in 1983, none of the high-end clientele who was using personal training at the time, nobody would say, I'm going to go work out. But they would say, I'm going for a 2:00 meeting. I'll be back at 3. So the fact of the appointment was critical.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And plus, I noticed, and I don't know if it exists, but there was a wide variety of training styles and quality. And some trainers were busy, trainers who were good were busy, trainers who were terrible were busy, trainers who were into it were busy. And I was trying to figure out what's the thing in common. And then it took me, like I said, a couple of years for the penny dropped, and I realized it's the appointment.
Right.
And I think, in spite of the fact that all us personal trainers, I think we all want to believe people are coming to us for our brilliance. I think a lot of it is If it's an appointment, the person builds it into their weekly schedule,
Right.
and that helps them adhere to it.
And I think there's an aspect of, the trainer has to be good enough. Nobody really necessarily wants to go to or has to go to the best trainer. I have to find the best trainer. It's like, I'm going to find a trainer that's good enough, who's going to work with my schedule, and I enjoy going to them. They're not going to hurt me. They're going to get me the results. Somebody who, like you said, they're fitting this person into their life. Like, is this somebody I could spend time with on a weekly basis? Because that's what everybody knows. Like, I can give you all the fitness information that you want, but until you fit it into your weekly schedule, nothing's going to happen.
But that's absolutely the difference between a client and non-client. Like, on that first day they talk to you, the general fitness media or the infomercials would have you believe you have to bowl them over with your brilliance as a trainer.
Right.
And really what that prospective client wants to know is this person going to make me feel uncomfortable? Are they going to harass me? Are they going to, are they going to be obnoxious? They just want to know if can I tolerate this person in my life twice a week or 3 times a week or whatever it is.
Right.
For the most part, I think, there's some, I do have some people coming to me specifically to learn this. But I think as far as the business of personal training, most people need the help fitting it into their lifestyle, not necessarily converting their lifestyle to a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day fitness junkie.
Right. So is that the advice you would give somebody just starting out, as far as getting healthy and fit? Just find something that you can fit into your lifestyle, and find somebody that you can kind of jive with to walk with you? Or what would be the first thing you would tell somebody?
Well, I pretending to be diplomatic, I usually say something like, you should do what you will do.
I like that.
Like what I do here with machines and free weights and cardio ergometers and assisted stretching, whatever, that's a way to do it. But if for whatever reason that's not for you, you should do what you will do. And I've had prospective clients tell me over the years, look, I hate lifting weights, but I really enjoy walking. I said, well, make the time in your week to walk then. I mean, commerce aside, that's the real answer, right? I mean, they should do what they will do. Now, if they go out and get banged up doing that, if what they will do is no brand names, but if it's a type of boot camp,
right,
and they get more injured than they get in shape, that's a different question.
Right.
But in terms of the raw question, how should people get in shape? You should find the thing that you will do and do it regularly.
100%. There's thousands of ways to get fit. Like pick 2.
The other thing too is the perfect routine that takes you hours to do and you get sore and discouraged and you don't go back to it for a month is not nearly as good as a vanilla routine you do regularly.
Right.
So, don't be too overambitious when you're starting a routine.
I agree 100%. I listen to Tony Robbins a lot, and I know he's talking about this, and he says, so many people get caught up with trying to find the perfect trainer, the perfect program. And he was talking to a woman who I guess was like 50 pounds overweight. He said, no disrespect, man, but you just need to hire somebody to stand behind you and yell, run! You don't need like the best.
Well,
so,
and long before Tony Robbins, somebody said the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The prospect of the perfect plan is the biggest obstacle to just executing a good plan.
Yeah.
So,
and even just getting started in what you would call a good plan, little by little, you'll iterate, you'll change subtle things. I'm sure since 1983, you've started to do things differently, and that's not a big sweeping change all at once. It's probably just one little change, and go, maybe I can do this a little bit better. And then before you know it, 35 years later, you're doing something that maybe looks completely different, right?
Well, that's if you as the trainer or as the exerciser are paying attention. That's
Yes.
what happens.
Yes.
If you're still determined to bench press at 55, but you bench press at 25, or this is what worked for me at 25, I have to do this at 55, otherwise I can't get in shape. That's just going to lead to frustration.
Right. That's just a,
and I know that.
speaking from firsthand experience,
And
I definitely have done
I
that.
completely know that. Yes.
100%. Me too. Yeah, I grew up as an athlete. I played football, basketball, baseball, soccer, and in my I'd say in my late, even up to late 20s, early 30s, I was still falling victim to that. Like I'm going to work out the same way I did when I was 14. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It will get you injured. But that's a good segue, because I want to talk about your book a little bit. Again, it's Joint Friendly Fitness. And I wanted to go to these diagrams. These diagrams are great. Hold on, bear with me. There we go. Okay, so you have a lot of exercises like this where you have 4 images, and you have the extreme start, which is an X. Don't do that. This is a very, stretched out range of motion. That's very bad on the elbows. You have the optimal start, you have the optimal finish, and you have the extreme finish. I really like this. You're keeping the range of motion tight. You're keeping it controlled. You're not getting overzealous or overextending people. And you break it down into all the different body parts, forearms, trunk, cardio, stretching. What were you always thinking in these terms, or is this something that over the years you've sort of developed? Because I find that a lot of trainers aren't necessarily thinking about the range of motion and how to really optimize it for joint integrity and longevity. So how did that come about?
Well, it's not just a lot of trainers. Well, for me, how it came about was in 1998, I ruptured my own biceps and triceps training. And I had been a trainer since 1983, and I'd been working out for, say, 10 years before that. And I was certified, and so I wasn't inexperienced and untrained or uneducated as far as this went. So in 1998, I ruptured the biceps and triceps. For whatever reason, I skipped all my exercise material, and I went to friends of mine's physical therapy bookshelves, anatomy, biomechanics, kinesiology. And so I was trying to figure out what was wrong, what went wrong. And what I put together was that a lot of what I had been doing in the name of exercise really contradicted safe joint function and safe joint muscle function, at least according to the biomechanics and kinesiology textbooks, if you trust them. And most of my, in spite of the certifications, in spite of whatever college courses I took in it, most of what and I think my peers thought we knew about exercise came from the muscle magazines at the time, or some of the trade paperbacks that were out at the time. And especially guys my generation were influenced by the Nautilus training style, which used to emphasize a full range of motion. And when you take that out of context, it can turn into an extreme range of motion. So while the phrase of full range of motion isn't necessarily bad, especially if you explain what that range should be, but when you take it, especially with a weight, to an extreme range, nobody that I'd found had explored the consequences of doing that. So just as for instance, with the ruptured biceps and triceps, that at the time the thinking was not to repair them, which is a separate long story. There were some exercises that I didn't miss. I was just as strong before the rupture as after the rupture. rupture. And then there were some exercises I couldn't even get into position, which struck me as like, well, something's not right here. Why? Like, for instance, I couldn't do a concentration curl or a triceps kickback, but a regular standing curl and triceps press down, I had no trouble with.
Interesting.
So that definitely led me away from the muscle magazine, training the muscle at different angles and, shaping the muscle and strengthening different joint angles by your exercise selection.
Right.
It definitely led me away from that and deeper into the biomechanics books, where you realize that there are predictable muscle torque curves, whether you train a range of motion or not. And that if you load the extreme, and I don't mean just move into the extreme, I mean load it with an external weight.
Yeah.
There are things like impingements, there are insufficiencies, there are, like in the shoulder, you can be binding the ligaments and actually stretching them, but not in a good way, in a way that creates joint laxity. So basically this started in 1998. After about 3 or 4 years of that, I put together this called Moment Arm Exercise, which was my first attempt. That was basically my notes for my own training, put together in a manual. And it found a little bit of an audience among guys my age who had the same, they all read between the lines what I didn't say in here, and they knew exactly what I was referring to. So it gave me a little bit of credibility among a certain niche of trainers. But I read this now and I know it's very overwritten. It's again, it wasn't written to be read. It was written as my notes to myself.
Right. Gotcha.
So then I did some YouTube based on that, and YouTube led to some presentations at seminars and such. And then that feedback led to, a few years later, another book, Congruent Exercise, which I deliberately tried to make a little more current, so that in 2012, people who are familiar with stuff in the fitness world could read it and get the context. And that led to video, more seminars, etc. And then a couple of seminars I gave, I did notice when I would do a seminar, if I would start explaining the anatomy and biomechanics and then try to relate it to exercise, I would lose the audience, completely glaze over. They suspected I was onto something, but that was not the way to present it. And then in 2014, I said, let me try something different. And instead of giving a presentation like the conference room, I went into the gym and had a few people do a few exercises. And then I said, okay, this is how I would coach the exercise, and here's why. And then if you explain the anatomy and biomechanics, I could see it clicked a lot better. So that's why in Joint Friendly, the exercise pictures are first with a big X and a big check mark in case it's not subtle enough. And then I have bullet points and then paragraphs underneath that. And then if the person really wants to get a little more in depth, they can flip in the back to the biomechanics section where I discuss each joint. Because, I'm not an academic, so I don't have a captive audience.
Right.
You break open an academic textbook, or you go to like a lecture by a academic professor. Well, they have a captive audience for what, 12 weeks, 16 weeks? They can take forever to get to the point. Their audience has to stay with them. But if you're selling a book to a non-academic audience, you've got to get to the point quickly. So people want to go into a gym and lift weights. If you don't get to the point quickly, they're just not going to wade through all the biomechanics jargon. So that's why I laid it out the way it is, with the exercise pictures first, a little bit of information, and then in the back, this way if someone really wants to pick it apart, they can look at the biomechanics I was referencing.
Nice. So So Bill, summarize just for everybody, sort of big picture, like what to expect going through this book, like, you know, over the course of, let's say, 3 to 6 months. What do they expect once they buy this book? By the way, is this available on Amazon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's too efficient to not.
Yeah, exactly.
Not have it there.
So they buy the book on Amazon. What do they expect over the next 3 to 6 months?
Well, so first, the people I'm trying to reach at the moment with this book are experienced exercisers with new aches and pains. So this is not, I'm not promising to make you a fitness influencer, or I'm not a fitness influencer. So, but this is not about this is not flash. This is about training over a lifetime. So probably people around your age and up who've been doing their workout all along and now are experiencing shoulder pain, back pain, hip pain, maybe not severe enough to go to the doctor for, but if you're wondering if your exercise selection is contributing to it, you're probably right. Mm-hmm. And you know what I envision is people when they had the look inside feature on Amazon, so you can see what the pages look like. So I envision people going through the star ratings and seeing where their favorite exercises fall, and then going to the actual exercise itself and saying, okay, you know, if someone's shoulder hurts and they're doing the X position in the push-up or the chest press, where your elbows are far back behind the plane of your torso.
Right.
Well, if they simply cut down to the ranges, the optimal ranges I demonstrate in here, hopefully within a couple of months, they're no longer feeling that discomfort in whatever joint is bothering them.
Right.
So that's why experienced exercise, you know, if you notice, whether it's bodybuilding, martial arts, yoga, up until age 40 or so, everybody involved is going to kick everybody's ass. They're going to be the baddest badass in the world, right?
Right.
And around age 40, the injuries and the aches and pains start piling up, right? And then the martial artists decide to get into the internal martial arts, and the yoga guys start modifying the poses.
Yeah.
And the bodybuilders start dropping the press behind the neck and the bench press to the throat. Right. But there's all legitimate reasons why to do that.
Right. Absolutely.
So again, that exerciser with new aches and pains might find the answer in here.
Got it.
And if not, they'll at least know where to look for the answer. So.
Got it.
And then the other, you know, after that group, the other group I really have in mind is people who drop out of health clubs. Mm. Like here in the studio, I would say most of the clients here come, it is the appointment, but they could also have an appointment in a big gym. They're just not comfortable trying to sort out the machines.
Gotcha.
And frankly, they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to go on a machine and hurt themselves on the machine. They're smart enough to figure it out. They just would rather not. It's just they'd rather spend their time elsewhere.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's not a real sexy pitch unless your back, your knees, your hips, your shoulders hurt. Then people see the value of it. Right.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think that's very well thought out. It is good for, like you said, people like me. I'm 41 and been working out my whole life. And this is, you know, like you said, it's a very common sense approach. It's just simple. You open the book, there's the 4 pictures. So I want to encourage people to check out this book, get it on Amazon. And Bill, I really want to thank you for joining me today. Any final words before we cut out today?
Well, I mean, I also, you know, there's a look inside feature on Amazon, so people can look through. I think I sent you a link. I do a newsletter every week where I either elaborate on something from the book or elaborate on some of the references I use to put the book together.
What's the best way to get in touch with you? You have a website, social media?
You know, probably LinkedIn is the best. Like where we met. That's probably the most direct way.
Okay, sounds good.
You know,
All right.
the other social media, there's so much, there's a lot of clutter on all social media.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn is probably the best way.
Sounds good. Well, Bill, hey, I really appreciate you joining me today, and love to hopefully have you back sometime in the future.
Thanks for listening to the Health in the Real World show. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Visit mycorebalance.com to learn more.